Do you see now the difference in our power?
Of course, I would have wanted the shop to be done different. I would have wanted the shop to be announced before the game came out, so people can know that it exists, like they did with Dragon Ball, right? But then too, like if you're gonna add a shop, I don't think it's right for you to destroy the customization that's in the game. Like Tekken 7 had significantly more, Tekken Tag 2 had significantly more. I don't think it's right for you guys to remove the customization so players feel more incentivized to buy customization because there's a lack of. So I don't like that aspect. But with those, you know, things aside, I have no problem with them trying to make money. And you know, if they didn't do all that slimy, greedy stuff, I would have been more supportive in them adding the store. You know, there's developers' reasons why there's less customizations. I can explain why it's so much more expensive to make, but it would be too long to write. Hey, if you want, we could jump into Discord real quick and you can say it. I'm talking to Dell right now. Dell is a developer, worked on a lot of different games and whatnot. But yeah, go ahead.
First off, I don't want to try and say I don't agree with you. It would be nice if there were more customization. 2 or 3 factors here that make it so it's much harder to make customization for Tekken 8 than it was for Tekken 7. And there's one that I don't think people realize the gravity of when it comes to the modding community. Because I think we've all seen mods and we're like, that looks amazing. Why can't we just have that? Why can't like Bamco just make that?
Yeah.
Okay, so one, you have to create return of investment that is equal or tantamount to equal to all consumers of the game. So that means you play Yoshimitsu.
Yeah.
If someone plays King, Jin or Lily, etc., they cannot play the game and watch you get more outfits than them and not have a bad experience. So often what will happen is we'll see this amazing new, I don't know, Lily mod, and you're like, oh yeah, that's a sick mod. The problem is they can't just make that mod and release it and then have everyone else be okay. They're like, okay, cool, you've got like this crazy outfit for Lily. Where's my Jin outfit? Where's my Leo outfit? So,
yeah.
And the time it takes for that modder to make that outfit is probably quite huge. They probably spent a couple of months on that one outfit.
So when someone mods an outfit, that's like real like game design. Like they're like really creating it. It's not just like copy and pasting.
One, there is mods where you literally take the assets from another game and manipulate them to fit in on a Tekken 8, what we call the rig or the skeleton.
Okay.
That's, I don't know, that's like low level modding.
Like actual.
Yes, there's high level modders where they literally understand how to make character assets and character models. And those guys are literally spending ages in 3D packages making the outfits like over time. They're releasing it like, hey, I've released this thing. You don't know how many weeks they've spent on that asset. And so on that side of things, one, they don't really have the time to work on all those things. And to be honest, those things are kind of hacked in. They don't really work 100%, but people are much more understanding about those outfits. They kind of break the art style sometimes. Sometimes they have high complexity, but they don't work in cutscenes, or sometimes they manipulate the asset in a way that you'll start to see clipping. So you'll often see like even this image, the hands start going through the dress. All of that stuff has to be fixed before release as much as possible. So you're like, oh yeah, why don't they just have this outfit? It's like, yeah, you kind of have to adjust the rig and adjust the skeleton and adjust the animation to make sure that you don't have, when someone has that outfit, their like hand or elbows not going through something else. Like
another thing, so there's an idea, it's like, okay, so the modders are doing all of this like hard work and they're cranking out outfits and whatnot.
Yep.
Do you think it's possible for Bandai Namco to like allow like let's say proven mods to be like in either the store?
It's not too technical, and I'll explain why it's not too technical, why there's precedent, and why they might not be doing it. So the reason that it's possible to do, we know that, is because other games do it. Long story short, Warframe is a game that has too many characters. There's way too many characters. So what they did, they created a system where they said, okay guys, we're going to create this resource for anyone who's really good at 3D to be able to download our characters and then create new outfits as long as it fits our art style. And you create the new outfit or the new suit. They're basically like Guyver suits, essentially. They're like bio suits. They're not like regular clothes, but they're like, if you can match our art style, here's all the resources. We're even going to give you tutorials on how like our complex shader works for our engine. And then you can submit that And then we're going to review them internally, and then we're going to make a decision on which ones we accept in the game. What was really good about the Warframe system is they actually gave royalties to the 3D artists who managed to get their successful stuff in game. And at first they only did it on Steam. So that's actually something that I personally did. So I got my models in Warframe for people to buy. They can buy it now, and if they buy it, I get 20%, 33% cut every time someone buys the outfit.
So do you think Tekken could do that, or like?
Yes, potentially. There's a different problem here now with Tekken. With Tekken, it's on way more SKUs. SKUs means platforms, effectively. It needs to run on PC, and it needs to run on Xbox, and it needs to run on PlayStation 5. So there's going to be some sort of disparity. And so what happens is you have 3 problems. First problem is we need to find a way of reviewing all of these things and making sure that they're optimized enough that they don't affect frame rate. So you can put a mod on, you're like, oh, this is the greatest mod, but then it slows everything down and it affects the frame rate because you haven't made it as optimally as the Bamco guys have.
It's like rendering too much.
Precisely. Or the texture sizes are too high, there's too much poly count, it's using too much of the shaders, etc. That stuff matters a little bit less when you're not playing a competitive game. The other thing too is they have a much stricter code of following their guidelines because there's like legacy here. They want to control the visuals of the game, the art style. So they probably might feel uncomfortable about it, especially because Japanese developers in general, they have a very different view of modding than, say, the West.
Yeah.
And modding was always a Western thing. Like, if you look at the old Quake games or even The Sims, that was always a Western thing. Like, modding was much more of a thing.
Yeah, because Capcom and Tekken, they both, tried to take out modding. Bandai Namco stopped. I don't know if Capcom ever pulled off a Street Fighter, but even if you just look at Twitter, like Ed Boon will tweet out like modded stuff and videos. I haven't seen him do it in a while, but he used to. But it's rare when you see if Harada or something does that. They just see it differently.
And so there's that aspect. There's a cultural thing where they just don't like outsiders making their game or affecting their game. They don't really see it as the same way in the West. So there is that. The art styles a hindrance, the technological requirements of making sure it's like high frame rate, etc. Another aspect too is that might cannibalize their own plans. If, for example, someone makes a straight up samurai outfit, like a Ghost of Tsushima style samurai outfit for Yoshimitsu, what if there was already a plan to do that in a future DLC?
Look, I'm going to show on the screen. I don't know if you've seen this before. The person who did work on one of the God of Wars just made one of these outfits for Yoshimitsu just because they liked the character. And Harada seen it. It was super viral. They said they would love to work with this guy in the future. And then the conversations stopped, right? We don't know what happened there.
Precisely. Okay, so here's a perfect example. So Raph and I actually live quite close to each other. We're good friends. We meet up all the time. So this is a perfect example of where it could work, where they almost commission an artist to do the stuff. And I think that's probably the right way to go about it. Make an agreement with all of these artists where you're like, hey, we want you to make an outfit. Here's what we're going for. It actually wouldn't cost them a lot because the cost to actually spend to pay someone to develop this would be quite high because it's such an niche expertise. But if you straight up said, if you manage to hit the art style, we pay you nothing, but you just get residuals. We just get you revenue or percentage from every time it's sold. That would probably be more successful.
Do you think that they are taking a long time to make these outfits? So they do probably let's say 4 a month maybe. Do you think that's slow or do you think that's on par?
I think it's not that it's slow, it's the right time, but people are used to front-loaded live service games. So I'm going to explain what front-loaded live service game is. Let's say the game took 5 years to make, right? Yeah. You're working a game, blah, blah, blah. You make all the assets, you made all the characters, etc. on year number 4. Now we're going to spend this last year making DLC outfits. When the game comes out, you've got a year's worth of outfits. Once you've run out of that 1 year backlog, now you're playing catch up. And your catch up game is always going to be slow, and it's going to be slower than Tekken 6 or maybe even Tekken 7 because the time it takes to make assets now is 3 to 4 times longer than it was in older Tekken games. The time it took for us to make assets when I worked on Last of Us 2, it was like months worth of work just to make a new character asset.
How many
In like,
people do you guys have, like, typically? Like, what's the size of a team?
I don't want to give like definitive numbers because depending on what game, like when I worked on like Star Wars Jedi Survivor, that was a different number. When I worked on Last of Us 2, that was a different number. But the idea is that you have a core team, say like 7 people internally working on this stuff. Then
Okay.
you might have 25 people who are like outsourced, or a company, a contract company that you get and you pay them for work, but they don't actually work in the company. That's usually how most these places work. But the problem becomes complexity. So let's say you want a new hairstyle. Tekken Tag 2 had tons of customization, right?
Yeah, it had a lot.
The way we would make hairstyles back then, we would make something called like alpha planes, which were the polygons that the hair would be on, and they would have 3 types of textures. They would have the color texture, the normal texture with tangent normal space texture that would be affected by light, and then we would have the specular texture. 3 things that you would need to make, and you would bend those hair cards into any style you wanted. And you could make those relatively quick because, quite frankly, they did not look that good, like compared to what
Like
stuff
hair.
looks like now.
Hair is like one of the hardest things to do, right?
It is one of the more complex. The problem is now, if you go to modern Unreal games and you're like, okay, I want to make like new hair. So now the poly count is way higher because it has to have movement, because we don't like to see our hair completely stiff. We want to see some movement.
Yeah, Twitter will roast you for that.
They would absolutely kill you. So that adds another level of complexity. It means the poly count has to be higher. Also now means that it needs to be rigged and it needs to be animated. And all of those animations need to be tested. Every animation you can think of in the game needs to be tested with that hairstyle. So that creates a crazy amount of time just to add a hairstyle. But it's not just that, it's the complexity of the shader. To make hair for Tekken 8, you need more than 3. I'm going to list all the textures that you need. You need something called the root ID, which would explain where the hair strand begins and where it ends, and that would affect how the hair fades, and it will help determine where the start of the hair is and where the end of the hair is, and it determines how it's shaded. Then you have the grayscale color, so you can manipulate the color with a multiply layer. Then you would have something called the strand ID to make sure that every strand is ever so slightly hued so it doesn't look like it's like painted on. Then you have something called the depth map. That basically means that once the light, when it's in a night level or a day level, it looks like it's in the right time of day or night. Then you have something called the hair AO. That's the ambient occlusion. That would affect how the hair looks in deep shadow when there's no direct light to it, so it still looks realistic. Then you have something called the anisotropic direction. That would affect the way the light flows down the hair. No matter what happens with the hair or the light, it will at least feel like fur, or at least feel like hair, and it doesn't feel like cards or paper. And
it gotta like move like somewhat realistic. Twitter will flame them. I seen it happen so many times where like a game looks slightly off, and a post with like too many views, and like everyone's just like, lol, look at this game, 8 years of development for this.
Yes, correct. And that's because they tried to take a shortcut on what I just said. So the problem we now have is hair that used to be made for Tekken Tag 2 may have taken you 3 days, and now a new hairstyle for Tekken 8, that could be 12 to 15 days.
Final question. You think AI will help, or AI won't help?
I don't think it will help for a long time, because I don't think they have a problem designing the outfit. To make the actual assets, AI hasn't helped at any step of that so far. Maybe they'll make an AI that will be like, oh yeah, it automatically figures out this and blah, blah, blah. That just doesn't exist right now. And
yeah, one day. All right. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for
No problem,
popping
bro.
on.